Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first CDBG virtual public input meeting. We are doing the meeting this year virtually for the first time, obviously due to COVID. In a typical year, we would have some public input meetings in person, but we are waived from that requirement by HUD this year. But in an effort to still provide access for citizens to make comment, we did want to provide a virtual opportunity, even though it is not required by HUD for this year. So with that, we will go into our slideshow. Just for a little background, we are here to talk about Community Development Block Grant, also known as CDBG funds. These dollars are granted to the city every year from the federal government through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is what's called an entitlement grant, which means that the city does not have to apply for the funds. They are distributed according to a formula, but we do have to submit a plan on how we're going to use them, and we have to submit some reports on how much was expended and for what purpose. So there are a lot of requirements that go along with the grant, even though it's not something that's competitively applied for. We have been receiving these dollars since the first year of the Community Development Block Grant, which was in 1974. So slides are not advancing. There. So we are currently in our 46th year of being a grantee of Community Development Block Grant, and the public input that we are gathering today is for the 47th year, which will begin on July 1st of 2021. So because it is federal funding, there are some restrictions attached to the dollars. And the main one is that the funding has to be used to benefit low and moderate income residents of Davenport. So this can be in a variety of ways. So it can be through directly benefiting low and moderate income persons. It can be through eliminating slums or blighted conditions, or making improvements in low and moderate income areas. Or it can be used to meet a community development need that is urgent. So typically when we think about these, we're thinking about natural disasters like tornadoes or fires or hurricanes, although in this current COVID environment, there is perhaps a case to be made for COVID being an urgent need, and there are some certain restrictions with how you would go about doing that. So, so the funding is available, but it is limited in what it can be used for. So when we talk about low and moderate income residents, we are talking about income by household size. And I think a lot of people think of these type of funds going to be used for very, very low income people. But I think what it's important to remember is that these are people who are working families in a lot of cases. They just aren't making very much money. So on the screen, you can see a table where it talks about the income limits for household sizes. So for a single person, we're talking about $42,000. $42,250 is the limit. And for a family of four, it would still be eligible up to $60,300. So it's quite a chunk of change, and that would still be considered eligible under the moderate income category. So these are people a lot of times who are working service-related jobs, who are working entry-level jobs, or who've just graduated from college, or graduated from high school even, or people that have really well-paying jobs but perhaps have large families. And so when you take that as a household size, they would fall into these limits. So those are the kinds of households that the dollars are meant to benefit. So as we mentioned, the city is an automatic entitlement community, and we receive every year a little bit over $1 million in community development block grant funds. So those dollars, as we mentioned, have a lot of requirements attached to them in terms of planning and reporting the use of them, and then administering them in accordance with federal requirements. And so that falls to the staff of our Community and Economic Development Department to oversee those dollars. And so that's something that I do in my work. And then Megan Overton in our office does our planning and our reporting, and she will be talking to you in a few minutes. So these funds, as we mentioned, can only be used for eligible activities, and that is primarily ones that benefit low and moderate income residents. And they can only be used by eligible recipients or applicants. So generally, when we're talking about that, we're talking about city departments, such as the Community Economic Development Department can run programs, and then 501c3 nonprofit agencies can apply to the city to obtain funding to run their own programs that meet the federal requirements. So that is primarily what we do in our office, is make sure that all the rules are getting followed at all levels of the grant distribution. So with that, we will now turn it over to Megan Overton in our office, who will be talking about public input. I will give you a little bit of an overview just of how we'll gather it. So today we'll talk about input in a couple of different ways. We're going to talk about the different categories that can be funded, and we're going to talk about the areas of the city that have the greatest need. So we're talking about what is needed, but also where it is needed. And you'll see this map again, but I do want you to take a look at it and note that the city is roughly, very roughly divided into quadrants labeled A, B, C, and D. And it starts with A in the northwest kind of portion of the city, and it goes clockwise around. So that map you'll see again. So when we're talking about locations, we are talking about just referencing by letter where on the map you're seeing these needs. So with that, I will hand it over to Megan.
All right, so the first category we're going to talk about is affordable housing. So affordable housing are activities that support home ownership, housing rehab, rental housing, and other activities that are connected with housing, such as down payment assistance. So the city has currently 4 housing-related programs. We have an owner-occupied housing rehab loan, which provides low-interest loans to help correct existing and potential housing code violations, make energy efficiency improvements, and remove barriers of accessibility, eliminate lead-based paint hazards. We have an urban homestead program, which helps provide home ownership opportunities. We have a home buyer down payment grant, which helps first-time home buyers with their down payment. It's up to $2,500. And then we have an exterior accessibility grant that's available for both homeowners and renters to install exterior accessibility ramps or other options as necessary to remove barriers from their home. So our first questions for affordable housing is, what type of affordable housing do you think the city of Davenport needs? And then where would you like to see this housing in Davenport? You can reference the map. As Heather mentioned, you can reference it by geographic location by letter. If there's a certain street or smaller area in the city you'd like to put down, you can put that down. Just a general area. Our funding can be used citywide, so if you feel it should be citywide, we can do it that way. And then submit your comments in the chat function, and we'll record them that way. So we'll give you a couple minutes, and we'll move on. All right, so now we're going to move on to our next program area, which is economic development. So economic development are activities that support business development, job creation, technical assistance to businesses, and commercial rehabilitation. So in the city, we offer a small business loan program, which is designed to assist businesses either owned by low to moderate income individuals or those that are employing low to moderate income people. Loans can assist with things like working capital, such as your payroll, rent, utility fees, purchase of inventory, purchases of equipment, and that sort of thing. So again, here's our map to help you reference areas you'd like to see economic development in. So the first question would be, what type of economic development does Davenport need? And then where would you like to see it? So again, use your chat function and to submit your comments. And we'll give you about a minute or so to do your comments real quick. Okay, it looks like we had another person join us online, so I just kind of want to reiterate kind of the directions that we're looking for. So right now we're looking for feedback on economic development, what kind of economic development you'd like to see in the city, and then where you would like to see it. So you can reference the map, and it can be by an area, so the A, B, C, or D, or you can also be by a specific area you'd like to call out, citywide, however you want to reference with your comments. So we'll give a little bit longer in the chat, and then we'll move on to the next category. So right now we're just taking comments on economic development programs. Okay, now we're going to move on to infrastructure improvement. So our next category is infrastructure improvement programs. So these are activities for publicly owned facilities, such as streets, sidewalks, utilities, like water, sewer, lighting. Another thing, it could be accessibility corners on sidewalks. So the city runs an infrastructure in support of affordable housing. And then we also do a building demolition acquisition program where homes are no longer inhabitable and there's a hazard to the surrounding neighborhood. So for our questions, again, there's our lovely map. What kind of infrastructure improvements would you like to see in Davenport? Like what types you'd like to see, if it's more accessible corners, sidewalks in a certain area that might not have sidewalks, lighting, and then where would you like to see those infrastructure improvements? I'll give you a minute or so to type your comments in the chat function. Okay, we're going to move on to our final category of programs, which is public services. So public services are grant funds for a wider range of public service activities such as youth services, homeless shelters, mental health services, domestic violence, and other eligible services. So these funds go to social service agencies that then provide the services to residents. So in addition to operating costs and maintaining their facilities, CDBG funds can be also used for equipment and other items that might be needed to run their programs. So the city runs a subrecipient program. So those would be eligible nonprofit agencies that in Davenport that provide direct services to low to moderate income residents in Davenport. This is a competitive grant, and subrecipients must apply annually for the funding. So again, when we're looking for input on public services as to where you would like to see these public services, whether it's for yourself or if you have customers or clients or other people you might work with, where you'd like to see them in Davenport. It could be citywide, or maybe there's a specific area of the city you feel needs a certain type of service. So again, what type of services you'd like and where you'd like to see them, and then use the chat function and for your comments. And we'll give you a minute or so to put your comments down. Okay, so that was the last of our program areas. So we just want to mention there's other ways to participate for input this year. We have our community survey that's been open since August, and we're collecting input through this upcoming Friday, September 18th. So the link, it's through SurveyMonkey, is on their screen. So please take our survey if you haven't. Additionally, if you have more comments on our presentation, you can submit them now in the chat, or this will also be uploaded to the city's YouTube page. So you can watch it again there. It'll also be a link on Facebook. And then if you have more comments, you can give us a call at the phone number on your screen. It's 563-326-7765. And you can also email your comments to me or Heather, and I'll go back to the beginning where our emails are. Heather Johnson is heather.johnson@davenportiowa.com, and then my email is megan.overton@davenportiowa.com, and you can send your comments to us, and we will leave our chat open for a few more minutes if there's any final comments. Otherwise, we really appreciate all the feedback we've received and participation in our very first virtual public